clear. Go.
Welcome back as we continue with the Nomads' long walk in today's Cyberpunk 2077 lore. Recent updates from Mike Pondsmith indicate that Nomads will feature prominently in shaping the narrative for Cyberpunk Red and Cyberpunk 2077. In America, there are approximately 7 million Nomads, and over half of them have given their allegiance to one of the 7 nomad nations of North America. These groups are composed of clans, tribes and families which share common interests and enemies. The smallest of the nations is the MetaCorp, which shall be the focus of this discussion, who amongst other things are famous for making ACPA, aka Assisted Combat Powered Armor, and Warhammer Assault Shotguns. The Meta are the youngest and, in many ways, the strangest of the 7 nations. Youngest as they were formed during the Long Walk in 2010, and strangest because they are actually a corporation. Originally those of the Meta family were mostly ex-military and support services people in South America. Jonathan Meta was an army officer with years of service and a cornucopia of decorations. The war was all but lost, yet the government refused to stop. Most who fought in the Second Central American conflict were not able to remember Vietnam, but Jonathan Meta remembered. Jonathan Meta was born in Lincoln, Nebraska in 1960. He had a relatively uneventful childhood until 1969, when the full weight of the anti-war movement came to his hometown. In 1970, his uncle died in Vietnam. The funeral was a sorrowful affair. While outside, demonstrators waved banners calling John's uncle a baby killer and worse. John was unable to understand how the protesters could hate his uncle and his family when they did not even know them. Above all, he could not understand how the people could be so cruel when his uncle had received the Congressional Medal of Honor. From that day, John vowed that he too would be a soldier. Being the nephew of a Medal of Honor winner opened a lot of doors, and at age 15 he entered West Point, a US military academy. The stigma of the Vietnam War had not worn off, and being in the army was met with disdain, but Jonathan Meta persevered. He graduated top of his cohort. John's career became sketchy around 1984, and what is known as part true and part conjecture. Jonathan Meta's military records, like so much else, were completely destroyed during the collapse. Even the hard copies were lost in his case, and this has allowed him a great deal of latitude in later life. After serving as a platoon commander in an armored division and earning a master's degree in electrical engineering at Texas A&M University, he disappeared into the bowels of the newly formed Rapid Deployment Force, where his activities became a mystery. He was seen in very surprising places and even filmed at some public appearances carrying the football for the president. At the beginning of the first Central American conflicts, he disappeared again, this time apparently into the jungles of South America with the newly formed 11th Special Forces. In 2008, when the civilians redesigned the federal government, Jonathan Meta did not exist. He was not aware of it until the Second South American War ended in 2011. There was much to be done. Equipment had to be moved, and then there were the people. There were a lot of Americans in the area, and many would not go home with the troops. Jonathan Meta, the one the military still had records of, had died in Vietnam, so, like almost 2 million others, John was simply denied transportation to the United States. Under normal circumstances, he could have gotten it all straightened out given his military rank. Unfortunately, he was the commanding officer of a unit that did not officially exist, in a special forces group that did not officially exist, participating in a war that did not officially exist either. Sometime in late 2011, an angry Meta left the American command at San Jose, Costa Rica, and with the aid of the Special Forces Group, hijacked 3 C-5B Galaxy aircraft to the port of Panama. There they met up with several thousand more Americans who had been cast adrift, and with clever planning grabbed anything that could float, including the remains of a carrier battle group and 3 offshore drilling platforms off the Panamanian coast. Later that year, they declared independence as a sovereign nation and boasted the threat of nuclear weapons, to make refusal to recognize them inadvisable. Now, these moves were not as spontaneous as they seem. All of the original board of directors for MetaCorp were angry men who had fought in a war only to be shunned by their fellow citizens and country. The conduct of their fellow officers who had been running America under martial law also sickened them. They refused to be part of this society unless accepted on equal terms and separate from their corrupt brothers and sisters. All they desired was a way home and to be left alone, but by then, the remaining military wanted them all dead, so there was no way back. Given the hardware the Meta now had in their possession, they instead founded MetaCorp as a security and maritime construction firm. By the end of 2013, MetaCorp was involved in construction of Atlantis Phase 2 in New Galveston. They used the profits from their other jobs, including their growing security division, to construct MetaKey. The key was completed early in 2020 and opened to the public with great success. MetaKey is a mobile island city, freely owned by MetaCorp, and has no national laws to deal with. Everything except murder and slavery is legal. Almost every major corporation has an office there, and security is fairly enforced. It has been described as Hong Kong, Rio de Janeiro and Zurich all in one, sitting in the Gulf of Mexico. One of the factors that made MetaKey possible was Meta's development of the Jack suit. MetaCorp built the first working ACPA, or Assisted Combat Powered Armor unit, in the world, then sold the patents to Militech in 2017. Another weapon the MetaCorp are somewhat famous for is the MetaCorp Warhammer Assault Shotgun. This weapon's history begins with Pancor, a small company built on the Pancor jackhammer. The jackhammer was a revolutionary weapon with advanced materials technology, rotary action and barrel stabilization. The military was not interested though, and during the collapse of the USA, Pancor folded and the weapon disappeared. When the Meta Corporation was formed in 2012, one of the techs from Pancor reapplied for a patent and built the Warhammer, an improved version of the jackhammer. With a larger mag capacity, optional smart chipping, and a wider range of ammunition types, the Warhammer has impressive tactical versatility. The completion of MetaKey is only the first step of an ongoing plan for the Meta. John Meta believes in building the Nomads another home, one that would provide sanctuary if things were to get even worse on the surface of the Earth, and that would be under the sea. John Meta believes that an undersea city would be safe from almost any natural disaster, and most man-made disasters as well. It would also serve as a beacon of hope to the people of the world. All of this would lead many to see the Meta as anything but a nomad nation, had it not been for the Troubles. Between 2012 and 2015, there were considerable stresses within the nomad community, an increase in competition and a resulting decrease of available work. The transition to a civilian government who wanted taxes from nomads, and the integration of survivors from the Long Walk. The Meta supported those who made the Long Walk from the beginning. They airdropped supplies when they could, and they provided air cover against the bandit attacks, which the government said never occurred. In the 7 years since their independence, the Meta have funneled over $3 billion into the nomad economy, and this has forced others to accept them as a nation. Bearing in mind this history covers events leading up to 2020, It will be interesting to see what happens with the meta in Cyberpunk Red in 2077, and whether or not the C project comes to fruition. In Cyberpunk V3, which is a separate timeline, after an abortive attempt to make a home in the ruins of abandoned Chicago, the 7 nomad nations were driven out of their new home by the fierce inter-corporate battles of the Fourth Corporate War. Led by their charismatic leader Santiago Aldecaldo, the Nomads decided to put what they had learned about megastructural engineering to good use, essentially looting Chicago and putting the rebuilt city on the huge banks of caterpillar tracks. From this beginning developed a culture strong on technical competence, independent action, close familial ties, and the need to be constantly on the move. Perhaps Mike Pondsmith and CD Projekt Red might revisit the idea of a mobile city in the future. Hey Chumba, I'm Kazuliski, and I hope you found this Cyberpunk 2077 discussion on the Nomad meta to be informative. Are you interested in more Cyberpunk 2077 content? Then be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you have any questions or feedback, please let me know in the comment section. Thank you for watching.
True to the promise made in 2013, it's still coming when it's ready.